So let me give you a statistic. 70%. 70% of change fails. So from where you're sitting, that probably doesn't sound like a very good number. But here's another piece of this. That number has stayed basically the same for the past 30 years. So what are we doing that we can't get our arms around this? And what I would argue is that it's not the fact that we're not able to get our arms around it. It's that the way we experience change in our companies has fundamentally changed. I've been doing this work for a really long time. And back in the day, there was some change that was happening. We were putting in an information system, or maybe we were merging a couple of groups together. Now, the rate, the speed, the sheer volume of change has increased exponentially. Back in the day, we used to talk about the change curve that people went through, right? You start over here, you experience some issues and some problems, and you come out the other end all the better for it. Well, today, if you look at the slide, what you see is that we're experiencing multiple change curves all at the same time. And while you're going through 6 or 8 things, the people in your competitors are going through 6 or 8 things. Your marketplace is going through multiples. Your people are going through multiples. Your suppliers are going through multiples. So it's never ending. So it's even more critical that, as I wrote in my recent article in Forbes, that you need to have a change leader's mindset and to really make change part of your culture's DNA. It's not a project. It's not something that we do over here. It's got to be integrated into how you run the business. Because without it, you're not going to stay competitive. You're not going to be meeting those aggressive goals that you've got. And you're not going to be the market leader anymore. So there's 3 behaviors that you as leaders really need to think about in terms of what are you doing and how are you tapping into emotion and activating action in your organizations around change. They are purpose, making sure that people are clear on purpose. They're about ensuring that people are seeking opportunity and that there is safety. So let me touch on each of those. So purpose. My most recent lesson around purpose came when I dragged my husband to a dance class. We wanted to go learn to dance the rumba. I love to dance, him, not so much. So as we were at this dance class and on this dance floor full of people, a couple of things struck me about maybe how this dance floor is a lot like what we're experiencing at work today. So one of the things was the music changes frequently and you have to quickly find the beat. Another thing was that some of the people out there, they're following a plan. You know, they've obviously been to dance class before, and so they know what they're doing and where they're going. Other people are just kind of doing their own thing, sort of responding to whatever's going on, having a good time. The other thing is that there's a lot of dancers out there, but you're not sure what they're going to be doing. And so the dance instructor said something that just stuck with me. She said, if someone is leading well on the dance floor, they're giving you an irresistible invitation to come along. So think about that. Are you providing your people with an irresistible invitation to come along? Because when that happens, and when people are being led in that way, it feels effortless. You're not questioning, you're not saying, well, why are we going that way instead of this way? You know, why did you suddenly change the direction? Why did you suddenly do this? It feels natural and they come along. So when leaders have that change agility, when they're making it part of their DNA, you're answering the question why. As leaders, we're really good at the what. What are we going to achieve from a numbers perspective? What are our goals? What do we need to do to make our investors happy? But it's that why that really brings people along and creates that irresistible invitation. So you want to make sure that you're creating purpose, because that purpose, that picture, does two things simultaneously. It opens the possibilities up, but it also provides the guardrails for how big we want those possibilities to go and where we want people to take those. The second thing you want to focus on is opportunity. Looking ahead to see opportunity, and not just you, because as senior executives, that's part of your job. That's what you do. But getting everybody in your organization to be doing that by making it part of the regular conversation, that it's not just something that we talk about when things aren't quite turning out the way we want, but the time you should be doing it is when you're being incredibly successful, because that's when the change is going to sneak up on you. You want to give space for experimenting, and then you want to advertise that success. What's going on? What's really happening that's making this all so exciting? So let me introduce you to Maggie. So Maggie is a senior director at a tech company that I work with. They're on a huge growth curve. They have grown through acquisition. A couple of years ago, they added 1,500 people to their workforce in 1 year. And in the time I've been working with them, they've grown from about 3,000 to about 7,000 people. So change is a way of life. The other thing about this tech company is that they are a leader in their part of the tech sector. As a matter of fact, they created their part of the tech sector. And it's a company full of engineers sitting in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So the war for talent is very real for them. These guys can literally walk out the door and go to any other company and be greeted with open arms. And so the employee experience and developing that for them was key to how they were going to retain and hold on to this talent. So Maggie's role is as a senior director in a learning and development organization. So she thinks about these things. And she wasn't the only one. There were senior directors and learning and development organizations throughout the company, but they weren't talking to each other. They weren't coordinating what they were doing. So she saw the opportunity to pull them together and create this unified leadership team. But they weren't really able to get off the dime and do anything to make anything happen. And that's when Maggie asked me to come in and help her. And so we worked with this team to identify where were these opportunities to make the experience better, but to also increase efficiency. Because Maggie had a sense that within the next year, cost containment was going to be high on the agenda at her company. And so we worked together to identify some things that could become centralized. We created a shared services organization. We worked with this team, myself and the 4 or 5 leaders. We worked together to develop this new organization design. But part of this design was going to be taking a big chunk of people from one of these leaders and putting it in a different place. And so we also had to fight through that resistance. We had to help him see the opportunity here and help him deal with that emotion. Remember I said that it's about tapping emotion? We had to tap into his emotion to make him feel okay about doing this. So the result, they created this new centralized group. They're starting to see a more consistent engagement level. They're starting to see questions being answered more effectively. And oh, by the way, they're saving money. So the third piece that you want to think about is how are you creating safety? Now, safety seems completely counterintuitive to change, because change is all about risk, right? So here's how this works, though. When we're faced with a risk, there's a little tiny little part in our brain called the amygdala that gets triggered. And that's where you have that fight or flight response. That's where we go, oh, I'm going to sit here and resist this, or oh no, I'm running away from this as fast as I can. Or there's actually a third thing that it does. It causes you to freeze. I don't want to run away, I don't want to fight, but I'm just going to kind of stay where I am because I don't know what else to do. And so creating that psychological safety allows you to engage people around change and to make it okay to be having change happen all of the time, not just be a project that happens. By creating a place where they're able to talk about some of that stuff they're feeling around change. So I want you to meet Derek. Derek was a senior VP at a financial services company. And I write about Derek in an article that I have coming up in Harvard Business Review. Derek was by far one of the best change leaders I have ever worked with. He was known in the company for this. He had been in the company about 23, 24 years at this point, and had probably been in at least 10 different roles, basically creating change in the organization. So he was very good at it, very seasoned in it, but he knew this particular change was going to be different, and so he needed someone from the outside to come help him with perspective and help advise him around some things. And I played that role for him. So what he was doing was, it was a retail bank, and there were 8 different units that supported their sales and their support, which anybody in retail banking knows is key to what they do. And his charge was to take them and bring them all together, to create a unified approach to selling and supporting, to supporting their sales and service organization. So he was integrating these several units, and this also meant that he was bringing together a completely new leadership team, because all of these people had reported to different people in the past and had not worked together. So this new team of direct reports was both leading the change and experiencing the change all at the same time. And he knew that he needed to create this safe space for them to do that in order for this to be successful. So what did he do? We would get together and we would talk about the challenges that they were facing around the integration overall. What was challenging, what was hard, what was going on in that. They also got to the point where they were able to talk with each other about what they felt like they were bringing to this leadership team and what they felt like they needed from everybody else in order to be successful on this team as well as in their individual functions. After a few months, we did a pulse check within the team, and we had a very open, honest conversation about what was working and what was not. All of this continued to build deeper and deeper and deeper trust, because without trust, people aren't going to follow that invitation to change. What then happened was these leaders took some of these processes, some of these behaviors, and cascaded it through the rest of this 300-person organization. And I had the opportunity to be with them about 6 months later, after the change had been fully implemented, after they were looking at, now what do we do for the next phase of this? I was in a room with 300 people, and the energy was palpable about how excited they felt about this change and about how ready they were to move forward next. The other thing was they had also just gone through an engagement survey in their company, the company-wide engagement survey. And as it happened, this group, this newly formed group of 300 people who had just gone through an incredible amount of change in an incredibly short amount of time, scored amongst the highest engagement scores in the company. In addition, it was actually some of the highest engagement scores in the company history. So I want you to think about those 3 behaviors and question yourself, how much are you doing to create purpose, that irresistible invitation to come along? Are you creating the psychological safety that says it's okay to go on this journey? And are you creating those opportunities for them to seek out opportunity, for everyone in your organization to say there's ways we can do this different, there's ways we can step out, and ways that we can think about change differently?